I've always wanted to get hands-on with a LACO watch, and the name LACO, is it LACO or is it LACO? I say LACO, you say LACO, I say Omega, you say Omega, I say Sin, you say Zin. Nonetheless, today I have a LACO watch, and this is one of their watches that caught my attention for a few reasons. Because firstly, their color. The color of that case is, if you can describe it as a gunmetal, but it's not 316 or titanium, it's actually 904L stainless steel, and it's bead blasted. And that's the same stuff that Rolex uses in their watches. So corrosion resistance is going to be first on their list from the get-go, and that's a good thing for a pilot's or a diver style watch. Also, with this watch's DIN certification, a thin profile and a clean tool aesthetic, the watch is heading in the right direction. Now, I took this watch with me on a working holiday and I put it through its paces in water, practicality, how it really works on the wrist, and I gotta tell you guys, there are a lot of areas of this watch that I like, I really do. But there's also some questionable areas, some areas that have sort of raised an eyebrow, that design choices that I want to share with you guys in the course of this review. So without further ado, let's flip the camera and let's dive in. Now, when it comes to tool-specific watches like divers or chronographs or pilot's watches or field watches, I'm naturally drawn to them. Now, this particular watch, being a pilot's watch, has a DIN 8330 certification. And looking at the website, it's a very high standard for a pilot's watch. Firstly, with that corrosive resistant 904L stainless steel, to pass that certification, the watch has to undergo vibration testing, resistance to magnetism, legibility, reflections, strength and agility, and everything that you could possibly throw at a watch without breaking it, being realistic, of course. So this watch has got some decent spec in how it's been tested, which is great. Now that all sounds well and good, but it also comes at a premium, because this watch comes in at €1,790. That's around 1,850 USD, or just over 3K Australian. Now in that realm, with that sort of money, there are a few competitors, watches like Sin, the 857. And being up in Noosa, I actually popped into Define Watches and had a quick comparison with this watch side by side, just to have a look at what they look like. And you can see that this LACO has got the DNA of the Sin, from that dial, the fonts, and general overall specs. However, it is a completely different watch. And now, as I did mention in the intro, having this watch on the wrist for a week, I did like a lot of areas about it. I have bonded with the watch, but there are areas, design areas, which I'm going to share with you, which they are questionable for a watch of this caliber. And I'll share that in my gripes and room for improvement section. Now, LACO has sponsored this video, so I will of course leave the appropriate links in the description section. If this or any of their watches are of interest to you, feel free to check them out. And firstly, looking at the physical dimensions of this watch, at 43.5mm case diameter and a lug-to-lug of 49.8, that might seem a tad big. But on the wrist, that's not been the case, because alongside with that height of 13.5, it's actually worn quite well. That crown comes in at 7.4mm. It's a signed screw-down conical crown. The watch offers 200 meters of water resistance, and the total weight on the supplied Fibertex strap, I measure exactly 104 grams. And I have to say, guys, I've got an 18cm wrist, and on my wrist, this watch has been wearing great. I was a little bit hesitant that at 43.5 it might be big. It's not. After all, it is a pilot's watch, it's meant to be legible, you're meant to be able to get a first gauge read on this thing, and in that department it has excelled. The height of that watch, which I measure at 13.5, has been very good, and also the comfort on that Nitec strap has been a surprise to me. LACO says it's a water resistant strap, and because they said water resistant, I'm not quite sure how water resistant it is, so I actually swapped it out for an aftermarket strap, a rubber dive core, and wore the watch for the majority of the time on that particular strap while swimming. But getting back onto this supplied strap, I especially like the fact that it took on the shape of the wrist almost instantly when I first put the watch on. Because the strap is firm, but because it holds that shape, it actually works in the strap's benefit. So I like that. Now you notice from the side profile of this watch that it actually has screw pins instead of spring bars. And although they are stronger than spring bars, that has been a bit of a deterrent for me in trying to swap out more straps with this watch. So I've basically worn it on two different straps, minimalized the amount of strap changes that I've had with this watch. Now, if I turn my attention to the bezel of this watch, it's a 60-click unidirectional bezel. It goes in both directions, and the action for me is not too harsh or not overly smooth. It's somewhere in between. And I say that because I compared this to the Sin 857, which is a similar style watch, and the Sin was a little bit more smoother and refined. Now, that's neither here nor there. They are both tools, and for a tool-specific watch, the LACO did function well. Now, turning my attention to the dial of this watch, it's a very good layout for a pilot's watch. A triangle at the 12 with the 2 dots, 3, 6 and 9, and you've got a date at the 4 o'clock, which I think is a good choice here. And the fact that they've actually angled it towards the user, you can see that font. It's there when you need it, but it pretty much disappears when you don't. And whilst we're on that dial, let's check out the lume. It's evenly applied everywhere on the handset, the Arabics, the bezel, and for a pilot style watch, it's more than adequate and legible for its intended purpose. So in that department, well done. Now, if I turn the watch over, you'll notice there's a solid caseback with an aeroplane on it. Again, bead blasted 904L stainless steel. I really do like the color of this bead blasted finish. And hiding behind that caseback is a top grade Sellita SW200. You cannot see it because it's covered by that solid caseback. However, it's been running extremely accurate. So obviously there's a good regulation on that movement, and it does show in real world usage. Now, one thing I do want to talk about is that crown. I'm not a fan of conical crowns, but I'm a fan of this one. It's a pilot style crown. It's got some bite. It's a good size at 7.4mm, really easy to operate, buttery smooth in its usage. So again, in that department, I give this watch high praise. And lastly, as we spoke about the price, the watch comes in at €1,790. It's around $3,000 Australian, and that's pretty much on par for a watch of this caliber. Is it expensive? Well, I'll compare it to a Sin 857. The Sin is a little bit more expensive, slightly different technology with its tegimented case compared to 904. Inert gas filling, both have anti-magnetic properties, what have you. So there are a couple of different types of tool-specific choices at that price range for this particular style of watch. And on that note, what are my gripes or room for improvement that I've found throughout the week of this watch? And first and foremost, the lug width on this watch is 20mm. And for a 43.5mm case, it looks a little bit out of proportion. Normally we're used to 22mm at this size. Now, is it a gripe? Is it a room for improvement? For some strange reason, I've actually enjoyed the fact that it's 20mm. It still offered enough stability and sat well on the wrist. So even though proportion-wise, when I put this side by side with the 857, you could see that yes, it does look a little bit thin. Until I actually did the comparison, potentially I might not have noticed that in the real world scenario. Next critique for me is those screw pins. I know that they're stronger. I would have preferred spring bars on a watch like this. I love changing out straps on watches, and this being a water resistant strap, I really didn't want to throw it in water and swim with it because water resistant does not mean waterproof for me anyway. So changing out straps like this, you are going to find that you're going to potentially scratch up that case or those screws, especially when using Loctite to reinforce them. It does require a bit of torque stress to unlatch them again. Be careful when changing out straps on this watch. Another observation that I've seen on this watch, the crystal does offer a very slight blue hue on it, which I'm not a big fan of. I've never been a fan of blue AR in watches. I always prefer the more clear anti-reflective coating. Now, has it been doing a good job? Yes, absolutely. Just that tint of hue, being a colorist as a photographer, I've been trained to see color a lot, and that's one of the first things that stood out to me. However, throughout the week, it did disappear as you get used to the look of the watch. Now, the refinement of that bezel feel is good. It's tool specific, and I might be a little bit unfair here because I did compare it to the 857, and the 857 is buttery smooth compared to this. They're different watches, so that's a bit of an unfair comparison. For a tool specific watch, it's perfect. For something that you want it to work and operate and fall into place, no issues whatsoever. And last design choice obviously is that strap. Should they have chosen a strap like this? I love the way it feels because it does take on the shape of the wrist pretty much instantly. That's been a good thing. However, if you are going to swim with this watch, I don't know how long this strap would last. Especially in salt water and chlorinated water, it's a little bit questionable. And that's it regarding this watch. I think it's a lovely color. I do love the look of that case. It's a beautiful tone of gray. First time I've ever seen a 904L stainless steel watch sandblasted, and the finish is absolutely beautiful. The wearing and handling of this watch has also been on a very high level. The legibility has been a non-issue, as well as its tool-specific handling. Again, it's been a non-issue. And lastly, that top-grade Sellita has been running deadly accurate. So apart from a couple of little small design choices which were questionable to me, I think this watch from LACO is a very strong and very practical pilot's watch, and also gone above and beyond some of my expectations. Let me know what you think about this particular watch, or if you've had experience with LACO themselves as a brand, whatever model you might have. I'll leave all the links in the description section, as I mentioned, if you want to check out these watches. Be well, be safe, continue to enjoy this hobby, continue to enjoy the watches that come through your hands, and we'll see you all in the next one.